Hello. So, I thought I would continue and talk about some of the more general rules in the Tau Codex before getting to specific units, specific stratagems, specific septs, and so on. So, today I wanted to talk about the philosophies of war. So, these are your Mont'ka and Kauyon. The two that are talked about in the Tau Codex, along with the other overall faction or overall army abilities for the Tau. That'll be on page 93. So this comes along with other stuff, or sorry, 92, excuse me. You'll find it there. But this comes along with stuff like battle suits, marker lights, Manta Strike, all these sort of general rules for running the Tau army that you're going to have regardless of which sept you choose or regardless of which stratagems or your army composition or whatever. This is going to be there. So you're always going to have a philosophy of war unless your army includes certain units that will make you not a completely aligned army. So it specifies here if every unit from your army, excluding Tau Auxiliary, Supreme Commander, and unaligned units, is from the same sept, then at the start of the battle, when you have determined who has the first turn, you can select one of the tactical philosophies below. So Tau Auxiliary won't break this for you. They won't get access to it unless you go through some certain, I think it's Dalith, that'll allow your auxiliaries to gain the benefits, or something like that. It might be a warlord trait or something. Supreme Commander, so for example, if you took one sept, let's say Borkan, for example, and you took Commander Shadowsun, who is Tau Sept, but she is a Supreme Commander, so she can be in your army without breaking you out of the benefit of getting one of these philosophies of war. So important to note about these two philosophies is you get to choose it after you know who's going first. So keep that in mind, and it really allows you to choose with some comfort. Because if you had to choose at the beginning of the game without knowing, you wouldn't know whether you wanted to start more offensively or defensively, which these effectively are. One of them's more offensive, one of them's more defensive. But seeing as you know who gets to go first, then you can choose. Now, you may have already built your army with which philosophy you have in mind. I've seen a lot of people and a lot of talk on the internet of how Mont'ka is the clear winner of these two, or the superior one. And I'm not here to say otherwise. I'm not here to agree with that either. My opinion on the matter is jury's still out, and a lot of it is going to depend on your army composition and how you like to play. So both of these have their value. That much is certain. So let's go through them right now. We'll start with Mont'ka because it's the first one. So Mont'ka is for battle rounds 1, 2, and 3. It says in battle rounds 1 to 3, each time this unit, that's basically any unit that would gain the benefits of this, makes a normal move or advances in your movement phase. Until the end of your shooting phase, it counts as having remained stationary. Great. So you can move in advance and you count as though you've remained stationary. Each time a model in that unit makes a ranged attack that targets the closest eligible enemy unit within the range shown in the table below, we'll get to that in a second, improve the armor penetration characteristic of that attack by 1, and reroll a wound roll of 1. Okay, so you get not only to move in advance and count as stationary, which is going to affect a whole bunch of things. It's going to affect advancing with assault weapons. It's going to affect advancing with any weapon, pretty much, and you'll just count as being stationary. So things like broadsides, for example, that now count as infantry. If they move with their heavy weapons, they would get the -1 penalty to hitting. But if you have this in play, they would not. Now, the broadsides also have a piece of equipment that mitigates that, but if you didn't take that, the broadsides would get a penalty unless they're in the first 3 turns of Mont'ka. Then you also get improved AP by 1 if you're shooting the closest eligible unit, and you get to reroll a wound roll of 1. So this is going to require a lot of careful placement of your units with what they're going to shoot at. So, and this is only for shooting attacks. It's only ranged attacks. So anything in close combat or anything like that, I mean, you're playing Tau, so you're probably not planning on too much close combat, with the exception of that Onager Gauntlet commander, maybe some Kroot, who wouldn't get this anyways. But it's not going to affect any of that. So it's only shooting. And it's within specific ranges in a table. So the way it works is, depending on the battle round, 1, 2, or 3, the range gets smaller as the game goes on. So turn 1, turn 2, turn 3. And the way that works is, battle round 1, the range is 18 inches. So targeting the closest eligible enemy unit within 18. That's a nice sizable bubble for the first turn. It really will allow you to move your stuff, get into range, make sure that it is the closest target to reap all those benefits, because you will also be able to move in advance. There are also a variety of different warlord traits, septenets, stratagems, all these other things and abilities that allow certain units to be able to move extra at the beginning of the game. Things like Kroot, Devilfish have abilities to do this as well. There's a whole bunch of stuff that will support this as well. And further support for things like adding further AP to things, which basically means a lot of your stuff can get to like just melt through armor, which is really nice. Then by battle round 2, that range moves from 18 to 12 inches. And finally, battle round 3, it moves down to 9. So battle round 2 and 3, it gets a little smaller, but if you're playing with a heavily aggressive style, which this kind of favors, then being within 12 and then being within 9 on the 3rd turn is not going to be very hard to do. It should be relatively easy to do, actually. So that's Mont'ka, the more aggressive one. I forget what it's termed in the Tau language, but something to do with going in fast and messing people up. Then the second tactical philosophy, so the other choice that you have, is Kauyon, and that's from battle rounds 3, 4, and 5. So in battle rounds 3 to 5, this unit is eligible to shoot in a turn in which it fell back. But if it does, until the end of the turn, each time a model in that unit makes a ranged attack, subtract 1 from the attack's hit roll. So this on its own is quite cool. This allows any of your Tau units that will gain the benefits of being Tau, so not your auxiliaries, will be able to back out and shoot, which is really cool. Even at a -1, it allows a couple of things to happen. It allows for you to just be able to shoot the unit you backed away from, not just with the unit that backed out, but the rest of your army. It allows things like marker lights to happen and paint those targets, and then even though they backed out, that unit backed out and is getting a -1, if they take advantage of a marker light, they kind of cancel each other out. So you get a -1 and a +1 from the marker light. You do back to your normal ballistic skill, assuming there are no other modifiers in play. So that on its own is very cool. And realistically, by battle round 3, 4, 5, you'll probably be tied up with something. This is also going to depend on your enemy's army, right? I mean, if you're playing another Tau army, I don't know. I don't know if that's going to happen. I don't know if you're going to get tied up in combat too often. But if you're playing a lot of other armies, then there's probably something by turns 3 or 4 or 5 that might have you locked in combat, and you'll be able to just back out and shoot. And also, too, one thing of note is that a lot of your stuff can shoot into combat now. So that's a decision you'll have to weigh. While this may seem very powerful, it is in its own right, but there may be scenarios where, for example, if you have a unit of crisis suits that are locked in combat, it might be more beneficial for you to just stay locked in combat and shoot them in your shooting phase because you can. So you wouldn't be getting the -1 penalty. Might be the way to go. But the second benefit of Kauyon is that each time a model in this unit makes a ranged attack that targets the closest eligible enemy unit, so we're seeing that theme, within 12. So that 12 inches stays 12 inches for turns 3, 4, 5. That's always going to be there. There's no range degradation table like there is with Mont'ka. It's always just going to be 12 for turn 3, for turn 4, for turn 5. If that model is not within engagement range of any enemy units and did not fall back this turn, on an unmodified hit roll of the value shown in the table below, if that attack scores a hit, it scores 1 additional hit. So you're going to get exploding hits. Now, they specify that if you back out, you don't get this benefit. So those units that back out and then hit at -1 do not get this benefit. And let's say you kept those units in combat to shoot in combat, they don't get those benefits either. It would be a little too easy, right? You'd probably be in close range. That would be the closest eligible enemy unit because you're tied in combat with them. But you wouldn't get that benefit. So it's only for models that were previously unengaged and obviously remain unengaged by the time you get to your shooting phase. You will be able to get some exploding hits. So the way it works is on battle round 3, the hit roll modifier is 6. So what that means is, the unmodified hit roll is 6. So anytime you roll a 6 on the dice, that counts as an additional hit on battle round 3. Battle round 4, it's 5s and 6s. And battle round 5, it's 4, 5s, and 6s. So realistically, by turns 3, turns 4, and turns 5, you don't have your whole army, right? You don't have everything that you started the game with. And this is one of the big reasons why people are saying Mont'ka is better, is because you get to access it with more of your army, because it starts on turn 1 as opposed to starting on turn 3. And yeah, that's true. I've seen a lot of assumptions made, though, about that. With Mont'ka especially, saying that by turn 3, nothing's left. And yeah, there are games like that, sure, where by turn 3, there's a clear winner, or you guys have kind of traded stuff, and there's not much left. But I've had a lot of games of 40K go to turn 5, and it's unclear who's going to win, all the way up till turn 5, and then the victory points are counted. So while if you're going, to tournaments or something and you're choosing Mont'ka and you're playing at the highest level, then more games, I guess, are going to be decided faster. But I don't know, man. I don't like that assumption that it's like, well, turn 3, everything's gone. So I mean, if by turn 3 everything's gone, you're fucked anyways. The game's already done. So with this, yes, with Kauyon, while you have fewer units, you're getting more hits, right? This is to sort of mitigate that. By turn 5, you might have 3 units or something that are all dwindled in strength, but each time they shoot at something on a hit of a 4, you're just doubling those hits. And that's their standard ballistic skill. So 4s, 5s, and 6s, you just double all those hits, which is fantastic. And let's see. So each time a model in that unit makes a ranged attack that targets the closest eligible enemy unit within 12, if that unit is not within engagement range and it didn't fall back, this will also count you for Overwatch. So keep that in mind. There are pieces of equipment that allow certain units to overwatch on 5s and avoid paying the CP cost of overwatching. And if you do something like that on turn 4, that means that any hit that you get on overwatch on a 5 or a 6 doubles, which is basically a regular shooting phase with that one unit. If you count the number of hits, that's fantastic. Now, situational, yes, that may not happen. Or you may not have used those pieces of equipment, and that's fine. But it's worth noting, too, that just on Overwatch, if you just Overwatch with something, on turn 3, turn 4, turn 5, any hits you get in Overwatch will double. So, with the exception of turn 5, where it's a 4+, but which you're never going to get in Overwatch. But you'll be able to get those extra hits and make it seem as though you have more of your army left. So either way, I'm not saying Kauyon's better either. That's not what I'm saying here. I'm just saying that it's going to depend heavily on your army composition, your style of play, your opponent, the table that you're playing on, the mission type that you're playing. All of that is going to factor in, and that's why it's beautiful that you get to choose which philosophy you want after the first player, after you know who gets the first turn. So you're able to adapt that strategy. So this is a personal thing. I don't think I would build an army necessarily focused heavily, or not focused heavily, but with the keystone or linchpin being one of these philosophies. I'd want to build an army that could do a variety of things. And then, depending on the table, depending on my opponent, depending on the mission, I could choose. So I don't feel pigeonholed and then see the mission, see the table, see who goes first and say, oh, great, well, I built around Mont'ka and now I have to play this way, and it just ruins my strategy completely. So that's for me a personal thing. I wouldn't want to do that because I like versatility. But definitely build an army with a philosophy in mind, but maybe not as the core reason of why you're building the army in that way. So that you don't get to the game and, oh, you don't get first turn, and, oh, your opponent is this type of army, and it's this mission, and it's this deployment style, and, whatever. One of the really cool things about this codex in general that I've seen is incredible internal balance. And that means that there are so many ways to play the Tau army and win. There's so many ways to build your army, build your commanders, use your septs, use a wealth of amazing stratagems. There are tons in here that are all worthwhile. So you'll have a lot of different ways to play. The Philosophies of War is just one facet of what makes this army amazing. The rest is going to be your supporting characters, the units that you choose, the way you decide to deploy, things you leave in Manta Strike and things that you don't, the stratagems you really want to focus on, the layout of the table, what mission secondaries you decide to choose. All of these things are going to play huge parts, and hyper-focusing on one element of the army, while if you do get the ideal circumstances, will almost certainly net you a victory. If any of those isn't met, suddenly things start to seem a little shaky. So, thanks for watching.